Good afternoon, everyone. Now, first off, I'm going to warn you. You might want to be in tune with your emotions a little bit. If you got some tissue paper, if you got something, catch a couple tears, you might need it. Because I got a story that you may never forget. So I'm going to take you guys back 4.5 years ago. And 4.5 years ago, I woke up. I woke up because I was literally on fire. I had a broken right foot. My left foot was severed from my leg. I had a fractured pelvis, fractured vertebrae, bruised ribs, broken collarbone. And my right thigh was literally burning from the flame. And believe it or not, this was not the worst pain I'd have to experience in my life. Now, we all go through different challenges, different things that we can't see coming in life, things we don't expect. And life can throw us these unexpected curveballs that we never see coming. But what I'm up here talking to you about today is, what do you do when those curveballs come your way? Are you going to be able to bounce back and find the strength and resiliency to overcome when life doesn't go the way you thought it would? Or are you going to sit there and feel sorry for yourself and suffer? This applies to not just our life, but it applies to business as well. And one of the things that I realized as I get into this story, as I woke up face down on the surface of a burning boat, was that this was going to be the start of my journey to finding my resilience. And in the path of going through this journey, I found the roadmap that would lead me to be able to learn how to bounce back from the situations that comes in our life. And in going through this roadmap, I understood and had to learn that resilience is not about regaining what was lost, but about reshaping what remains. So let me take you back, like I said, 4.5 years ago. My wife at the time, Malika, she and I, we were actually getting ready to celebrate a momentous occasion. We were celebrating our 15th wedding anniversary. And at the time, I was working as an engineering manager for a company out of Atlanta. And she was working as a D&I specialist based with JLL out of Chicago. So I say this to say that we were both very busy, very hectic with our lives. She was traveling out of town 1 week for work, and then she would come back and I would go out of town because we had our 12-year-old son that we were trying to manage and take care of. So we had a lot going on within our lives during this period of time. But that made the opportunity to get away and celebrate this vacation so much better. So as we were getting closer and closer to this time that we were going to go on vacation, the day before we left, I drove my son up to Nashville, Tennessee from Atlanta to stay with his uncle. And when I dropped him off there, I told him, Cameron, I'll be back 1 week from the day to pick you up. Now, he was used to, this was during the summertime, he was used to being able to go and stay with his uncle and his cousins, get to play with their dog and have ice cream late at night and do all the things he shouldn't be doing when he was staying at home. But he was cool. Mom and Dad were going to go away, have them a good time, come back, everything was going to be great. As I left him with his uncle, I left feeling good that this is going to be a great experience for us and he's going to have a good time away from us during this period. So get back to Atlanta. The next day, Malika and I, we fly out to the Bahamas. Get to the Bahamas, planning to be there for 5 days. First 2 days were great. Had a good time. Some fruity drinks, some time at the beach, time at the pool, took some professional pictures, having a wonderful time with one another. But on the third day, we thought we were going to do something a little adventurous. We decided we were going to leave the resort. We're going to go on a small tour the island, get to see, some of the wildlife, get to see some of the natural environment. Now, the Bahamas is crazy. One of the things that my wife wanted to do was that she wanted to go swim with the pigs. Now, I had no desire to do this, but, that's her thing. She went and swam with dolphins a year before. I'm like, okay, we're going to go through all the zoo animals. Of course, all said and done. But we said we were going to go on this tour, so we wake up on that third day, 6:30 in the morning, excited, ready to get up and start this day. 6:30, we're gone to breakfast. 7:30, we leave for breakfast. We are the first couple at the edge of the resort, waiting for this bus to pick us up and go to the marina. As we're there, we're talking to other couples who are coming up, learning about where they're from, how their vacation's going, what are the great experiences they've had. Get on the bus picks us up at 8:05. At 8:35, we get to the marina. 8:45, we get checked in. 9 o'clock, we're actually on this boat, this small passenger boat, 12 people on it, and I'm thinking to myself, look, it can't get any better. This has already been a great trip thus far, and now we're gonna have an adventure that we're gonna be able to commemorate and enjoy this time away on this tour. And I can take some pictures of my wife with these pigs, it's all good. So, 9 o'clock, the boat takes off. And at 9:08, I wake up. Unbeknownst to us, there was a fuel leak emanating from the fuel tank that was right beneath where we were sitting. There was nothing that sounded awkward, nothing that felt unusual. And when I woke up, I didn't know what happened. Now, there were 2 boats that had left at the same time. One was going for the full day tour, the other one for the half day tour. We were on the one for the half day tour. And since it was still so early in the start of the trip, when I did wake up, I looked up. I was literally face down on my stomach, and I could see people from that second boat. The only reason I woke up was because of that right thigh that I mentioned earlier was literally on fire. I had been knocked unconscious, and as I looked up, I could see the people on this boat yell, "Get off the boat, get off the boat!" And I'm thinking to myself, well, hell, if I could get off the boat, I would. I literally look at my left foot, and my left foot is dangling. I see my ankle bone, blood gushing out. I try to push myself up, but I couldn't. My collarbone was broken. I don't realize that. I try to push myself up again. Here I am, my right leg's on fire, I'm burning. The only thing that I could do was reach my right arm out, put my fingertips in the ridges on the surface of that boat, and drag myself to the edge of the boat until I pass out. Now, since that second boat was so close, some of the passengers from this boat, they actually risked their lives, swam over, and pulled me off the boat onto their boat. And I'm grateful that they did, because about 3 minutes later, that second fuel tank exploded. As I'm getting placed on this boat, and I'm trying to process what's happening, I'm thinking about Malika. Where is Malika? Where is my wife? Well, when the explosion happened, she was thrown in a different direction. She was thrown out into the ocean. And there was another boat who came and picked her up and took her to shore. They had an ambulance to carry her back to a clinic. And when they finally got me back to shore, they put me on the back of a pickup truck on a piece of plywood, riding through the bumpy Bahamian roads as I'm going to this clinic. And I'm thinking to myself, God, why did this have to happen to us? What is going on? We're supposed to be in paradise enjoying the time of our life. But eventually, I get to the clinic, and as I'm getting wheeled in on a stretcher into the clinic, I finally hear Malika. I hear her moans, her agony, her screams. She's suffering, and I can't do anything about it. They wheel me into a bay, and there's one doctor there. And after what seemed to be an eternity, this one doctor came to me, and my first question to him is, how is my wife? How's Malika? And he told me, we're sending you and one other passenger to the good hospital. And I was like, how is Malika? He told me that she'll be coming to that good hospital later. Okay, cool. So I'm trying to process this. I'm thinking, if they're sending me and one other person to the good hospital, she must not be injured nearly as bad. And she's gonna be all right. So they get me ready to go on this air ambulance to fly to Nassau to where the good hospital is. And as I get there, I'm starting to talk to the doctors and the people in the ER, and I'm asking them, well, where's my wife? Is my wife here? And they put me into surgery and said that she's on her way. So a couple hours pass. I wake up in ICU. I found what's left of my left foot pinned back to what's left of my leg. And two doctors come in the room. And as they come in, I'm asking the most obvious question that you could imagine. Where is my wife? The The two doctors look at each other. Then they walk out. And I'm thinking, why can't they answer my question? Malika should be here by now. The accident happened at 9. They sent me from this clinic at 11. It's 5 o'clock. She should be here by now. The two doctors, they come back in about 5 minutes later. And they tell me, Mr. Jackson, we hate to inform you, but your wife didn't make it. Now, I'm trying to be optimistic about all of this. Didn't make it. That must have meant that there was a problem with the airplane that flew us to the hospital and went back to the other island and was bringing her back, maybe to refuel. No. Your wife died at the clinic. They didn't want to tell you before you left. So here I am, thinking to myself, this is supposed to be one of the most happiest times of our lives. And now, my partner, my best friend, my lover, the mother of my child, is no longer here. I cried myself to sleep that night and didn't know how I was going to move forward. Now, the next morning, I had to do something equally as tough. That 12-year-old boy that I dropped off with his aunt and uncle, I had to call him on the phone and tell him, son, Mommy and Dad have been in an accident, and Mom's never coming back. Dad, no! Son, calm down. It's gonna be all right. To have to hear your son try to process something of that nature, it's more than I could ever imagine. Broke his heart. And I reassured him that I was gonna be all right, even though I didn't know I was gonna be all right. Now later that same day, as I'm laying there in the hospital bed, and I'm starting to feel worse and worse, I can see the EKG monitor that's over my head. And on that EKG monitor, I can see my vitals go from green to yellow to red. That foot that I said was severed, and that they tried to reattach, it was infected. And infection was starting to go all through my body. So I'm seeing my heart rate, my blood pressure, my oxygen levels just go through the roof. And I'm sitting there and I'm talking to God and I'm saying, okay, you've already taken my wife, broken my son's heart, and now I'm about to die. They stopped bringing the doctors in to see me and started bringing priests in to pray over me because they thought I was going to die as well. And I'm laying there, I'm realizing I'm so broken physically, mentally, emotionally, spiritually. I'm mad about what happened. I'm mad at God. I'm mad about losing my wife. And as I said, I was coming to grips with the fact that I was about to die. Now, there were a lot of things that were happening in the background. And Lord willing, I woke up the next morning. And by that next morning, there had been a trauma unit in Florida that knew what happened. They heard about how bad I was doing. They tried to steal me out of the Bahamas, literally. They had tried to get my passport, all of these other things that were happening that were going to keep me in the Bahamas. But they got me out that morning, and that afternoon I was in Fort Lauderdale, Florida, and that next night I had to have my left leg amputated in order to survive. 3 days later, I had to go through 5 surgeries in one day just to start putting the pieces physically back together. But I was still broken. I was talking to God, and He told me that next day I was talking to God. I was praying, I was starting to come to grips with what was really happening. My wife is gone, she's not coming back. I don't know how things are gonna be with my son. I don't know how I'm gonna be. I did not plan to go on vacation and come back losing my rib, my wife, as well as my left leg. And as I was talking to God, He kept saying something to me. Sometimes we get these messages, and the message was, be resilient. Be resilient. If He wanted to take me, He could have taken me when the boat exploded. If He wanted to take me, He could have taken me when I was in the hospital in the Bahamas and all my vitals went to red. If He wanted to take me, He could have taken me the day before when I went through all these surgeries and I was unstable. He said, you still got a purpose here. And in order to get through the challenges that are still ahead, you're gonna have to be resilient to get past and overcome that. And that was when things started to click. Now, it wasn't easy, but at that moment, I knew I had to understand what resiliency was. And it was later down that journey, like I said before, resiliency is not about regaining what was lost, but it's about reshaping what still remains. And I had to figure out what I was gonna do with what still remained with my life in order to be able to have a story to tell on how I was gonna bounce back. So that's where my journey began, resiliency. And over the course of the next couple of months, I went through a tremendous transformation because I had to make that determination to be resilient. Now, normally I would go into what I call my roadmap of resiliency, which is, and that's an acronym for resilience, obsession, acceptance, discipline, motivation, attitude, and then the process. But for the sake of time, I won't go into all of that, but I do want to say one or two quick things about this, because sometimes we have to do certain things that get us going and get us moving forward, not only in our lives, but in our business. And that goes to the motivation. And I'll tell you this quick story. This was about a year before Malika and I went on this trip. And we were sitting in our basement, we were watching a movie, and it was one of these movies where somebody tragically died. And after we had one of these what if conversations. What if something were to happen to me? What would you want me to do? Well, Malika thought about it for a second, and then she looked at me, and she said, Ty, if I'm no longer here, I wouldn't want you to mourn or grieve for too long. I want you to go back out there and find happiness again. And then she thought about it for a second. And she gave me this list. And on this list were the names of 7 women that she said, you better not ever let in this house. You better not ever let my son. You better not let them. Them ain't my friends.
Facts.
She was a real one. She didn't play about that.
Right.
But the last thing and the most important thing that she told me was that if I'm no longer here, you need to do everything you can to make sure that the only part of me that's still left here on this earth is well taken care of. And that was our son. So when I found myself in the bed weeks after the accident, suffering from depression, anxiety, survivor's remorse, guilt, grief, all of these things, physically, I'm broken. I had to get up because I had to have that motivation. What was the motivation that was going to drive me? What was going to get me up? And when we face challenges in whatever area of life we have, you have to understand what your motivation is going to get you up when you don't want to get up and do things. So that led me to saying, okay, even though I am physically broken, I've lost 30 pounds, I've got to get the strength in order to start building myself back together so I can hopefully be able to walk again. The doctors told me after they amputated my leg that it'll be about 8 months before you ever start walking. But I started doing physical therapy and treating it with laser focus like it was the most important thing in my life at that time, because literally it was. If I wanted to walk with my son again, I was gonna have to get back and get to the place where I could actually move on my own. So even though they said it was gonna be 8 months before I could walk again, 3.5 months I was getting fitted for a prosthetic and started walking. And then that walk turned into a little jog, and that jog turned into me jumping over boxes and stuff in a run. And then before I knew it, I was running 5Ks. I never ran 5Ks before, nothing like that in my life. But to realize that when you have the motivation, when you have the right reason to be able to get up and do something that you know you need to do, it's gonna drive you, it's gonna push you, and it's gonna lead you closer and closer to success. One of the other points that I like to talk about when I talk about that roadmap is the process. And when I talk about the process, I want to let people understand. Now, I was an engineer for 18 years before any of this had happened. But when you think of, so process comes natural to me. And to me, process is a specific set of actions that are taken to get you from where you started to where you want to end up. Everywhere you got in life, your mind got you there first. That means you got to visualize where that destination is, where that goal is, and then you got to take a step back and strategize and be able to figure out what specific tactics are going to get me there. And this goes back to the things that I had to do to get myself back together. And it wasn't just me, but I had to go through grief counseling and therapy because I had a lot of things that I still had to process. But this was one of the things that I needed to do in order to be able to be there for my son and to be not just present, but be optimistic for what was still left of me in my life. Now, there's a lot of times and a lot of cases where we have something negative happen to us, and we do feel bad for ourselves. We sit, we linger, we end up stuck. But when you have something that's gonna help push you, guide you, get those habits in place where you can actually make progress towards a desired goal and destination, you gotta follow that. You gotta treat it with value and importance, because that's what's gonna keep you from being stagnant and stuck. And this not only applies to our life, but our relationships, our businesses. We have obstacles and challenges every day. From a business standpoint, COVID messed everything up for everybody. But part of it is how flexible and adaptable you are to the changes that are coming in your life. So I want to leave you with that as some of what goes into being resilient, because resilience in its truest definition is the ability to cope with, come to terms with, and bounce back better from the challenges that you face in life. Now, my name is Tyran Jackson, and as a result of what I've gone through, I've come to a place where resiliency made it possible for me to bounce back with my life and do things beyond where I ever imagined. My pain is what led to me finding my purpose. So as much as I love being an engineer for 18 years, I realized that my true purpose and destiny was to be able to impact the lives of others through giving hope and inspiration based on what I had been brought through. And so with that, I come to an end, but just remember that resiliency is key and critical to our success. We're gonna face challenges, we're gonna go through obstacles, and I don't know what you're all facing in your life, but know that you gotta find the resiliency within in order to overcome. My name is Tyran Jackson. Thank you for your time, and we appreciate you all. Thank you all. Now at this point, I want to bring up Dr. Cherry Collier, because we're going to have a little dialogue and do some things related to specifically on resiliency, and how we can use to overcome the challenges that we're all facing in our lives. So, thank you, Dr. Cherry.
Thank you. Let's give